Hello, those sports fans. My name is Bryce, and welcome to another edition of Sports Dreamer Podcast. Today's edition will talk about fantasy football starts and sits for week 2. But before we talk about starts and sits for week 2, we'll talk about our hits and misses for week 1. Here's our hits and misses for running back position from week 1. Some of our hits include CEH, who balled out on Thursday Night Football. And as mentioned, to bench Lev Bell from New York Jets, this is an offense to stay away from. Get out. Some of our misses from week 1 includes the names of Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, and Naheem Hines. From the running back position, out of the 64 that we discussed, we got 35 right for a score of 55%. I mean, we won't get everything right. Just call me Nostradamus if we do. Now we go to the wide receivers' hits and misses from week 1. Some of our hits from week 1 from the wide receiver position includes the names of Will Fuller, DK Metcalf, and DeAndre Hopkins. D-Hop got peppered with a lot of targets for his first game in Arizona. Our big misses includes the names of Tyler Boyd, Chris Godwin, and Amari Cooper. Out of the 62 wide receivers we discussed from week 1, we got 34 right for a score of 55%. And like I said, I don't have a crystal ball here. Let's move on to our starts and sits for week 2. Let's start with a Thursday night match between Cincinnati Bengals and Cleveland Browns. For the Bengals, I'll start running back Joe Mixon and I'll start wide receiver Tyler Boyd. For week 1, Joe Mixon still had 19 rushing attempts for 69 yards. And for your sits, I'll sit running back Gio Bernard and wide receiver AJ Green. For your starts for the Browns, we'll still start running backs Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and we'll still start wide receiver OBJ. And for your sits, we'll sit wide receiver Jarvis Landry. We're not sure how healthy he is right now. Let's get into our Sunday games. First up is Carolina Panthers versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For Carolina, regardless of the match, we'll still start running back Christian McCaffrey. Also, we'll start wide receiver DJ Moore. And for your sits, for Carolina, we'll sit wide receiver Robbie Anderson. Although he balled out last game, he's kind of a boom and bust wide receiver. For your starts for Tampa, I'll only start running back Ronald Jones and I'll sit running back Leonard Fournette and wide receivers Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Evans and Godwin are currently questionable to play this Sunday, so monitor their availability. If you have other options in the wide receiver position, you can fade away from these wide receivers. Next game is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus Tennessee Titans. For the Jags, I'll only start wide receiver DJ Chark and I'll bench running backs James Robinson and Chris Thompson. Just stay away from these running backs for now. For the Titans, I'll start running back Derrick Henry and wide receiver AJ Brown. And for your sits, although he balled out last game, I'll sit wide receiver Corey Davis. Next game is the New York Giants versus Chicago Bears. For the Giants, I'll start running back Saquon Barkley and wide receiver Darius Slayton. Please don't tell me you have already given up on Saquon Barkley after one game. For your sits, I'll sit wide receiver Sterling Shepard. For the Bears, I'll start running back David Montgomery. He seems healthy now. And wide receivers Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. And for your sits, I'll sit running back Tariq Cohen. Next game is Atlanta Falcons versus the Dallas Cowboys. For the Falcons, I'll start running back Todd Gurley and wide receivers Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. And for your sits, I'll sit wide receiver Russell Gage. We still want to see how the Falcons use Russell Gage this week. For Cowboys, I'll start running back Zeke Elliott and wide receivers Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CD Lamb. This will be a high-scoring game between the Falcons and the Cowboys. Plus, Blake Jarwin, the tight end, is injured. So there'll be a lot of targets for all wide receivers here. Next game is Detroit Lions versus Green Bay Packers. For the Lions, I'll only start Marvin Jones Jr. And for your sit, I'll sit wide receiver Kenny Galladay and running back Adrian Peterson. For Kenny G, he's currently not practicing due to a hamstring injury as of Wednesday. So I'm going to fade away from him this Sunday. For the Packers, I'll start wide receiver superstar Devante Adams and running back Aaron Jones. For your sits, we still want to see how they use MVS and Lazard. So I'll hold starting them this week. Next game is Minnesota Vikings versus Indianapolis Colts. For the Vikings, I'll start running back Dalvin Cook and wide receiver Adam Thielen. But I'll still bench running back Alexander Mattison. For your Colts, I'll start running backs Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines. Start Naheem Hines, especially in half PPR and PPR leagues. Also, I'll start wide receivers T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell, as this Viking secondary was torched by Devante Adams and the Packers last week. Next game is the Buffalo Bills versus Miami Dolphins. For the Bills, I'll only start wide receiver Stephon Diggs, and I'll bench running back Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. We still want to see how they use these two backs. And for John Brown, he's currently not practicing as of Wednesday with a foot injury. And for the Dolphins, I'll stay away from everyone, including wide receiver Devante Parker and running back Jordan Howard. We just can't trust this offense right now, especially going up against the Bills defense. Next game is San Francisco 49ers versus New York Jets. And for the Niners, I'll only start running back Raheem Mostert, and I'll bench whoever their pass catchers are. And for the Jets, I'll only allow you to start wide receiver Jamison Crowder, but beyond him, run away as fast as you can. Next game is LA Rams versus Philadelphia Eagles. And for your Rams, I'll only start wide receivers Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And for your sits, I'll put a hold on running backs Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers. We just don't know what their usage right now. For the Eagles, I'll bench everyone including running back Miles Sanders as he is coming back from an injury. Next game is the Denver Broncos versus Pittsburgh Steelers. For the Broncos, I'll allow you to start wide receiver Jerry Jeudy as we don't know if Cortland Sutton will play this week. And for your sits, I'll sit running back Melvin Gordon. You saw what the Steelers defense did with Saquon Barkley last Monday. And for your start for the Steelers, I'll start wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster if he's playing, and I'll start running back Benny Snell. And for your sits, even if James Conner is playing, I'll bench him. Next game is the Washington football team versus Arizona Cardinals. And for Washington, I'll only start wide receiver Scary Terry McLaurin. And for your sits, it'll be running backs Peyton Barber and Antonio Gibson. We still have to see how Washington uses the running backs. For the Cards, go ahead and start wide receiver superstar DeAndre Hopkins and running back Kenyan Drake. And for your sits for the Cards, I'll sit running back Chase Edmonds and wide receiver Christian Kirk. Next game is Baltimore Ravens versus Houston Texans. For the Ravens, I'll start running backs Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. And also, I'll start Hollywood Brown, wide receiver Marquise Brown. For the Texans, I'll still start running back David Johnson as he can still slot on the wide receiver side. And also, I'll start wide receiver Will Fuller. But for this match, we'll bench wide receivers Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb. For our next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus LA Chargers. For the Chiefs, I'll start rookie running back CEH and wide receiver Tyreek Hill. For your sits, I still don't trust Lizard King Sammy Watkins. For the Chargers, I'll start running back Austin Eckler and wide receiver Keenan Allen. Chargers will need to keep up with the high-scoring team of the Chiefs, but I'll still bench Mike Williams here. And for our game of the week is a Super Bowl 49 rematch between New England Patriots versus Seattle Seahawks. And for your Patriots, I only trust wide receiver Julian Edelman, so I'll bench running back Sonny Michel and wide receiver Nickel Harry. For your Seahawks, go ahead and start running back Chris Carson and wide receivers DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But I'm still hiding from Carlos Hyde. Go bench him. And for your Monday Night Football is the New Orleans Saints versus the Las Vegas Raiders. For the Saints, you can start running back Alvin Kamara and wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders. Wide receiver superstar Michael Thomas is currently injured, so you can start Sanders. And for your sit, I'll sit Latavius Murray. For Vegas, I'll only start running back Josh Jacobs, and I'll bench wide receivers Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. We just don't know what their targets would be. And there you have it, our week 2 starts and sits. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit the like button and hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.